I think we realized that this conversation, as powerful and emotional and disorienting as it is, this conversation between Jesus and this random man along the way happened, what, 2,000 years ago? Right? Yes? Okay. So the question this man asked Jesus, who will be saved? I would propose that it's important for us to ask ourselves the question, what does that man mean by saved? Because the moment we, 2,000 years later, the moment we hear the word saved, we automatically think going to heaven. So when we hear the question, or maybe when we ask the question, who's going to be saved, we're asking a question about heaven and hell. But here's the thing, that's not what this man was asking. Rather, 2,000 years ago, as Jesus is on that final journey going to Jerusalem, a couple weeks after this gospel, it's Palm Sunday, and then Good Friday, he dies on the cross. Jesus is fulfilling all of the expectations of the Messiah, and the people at the time expected the Messiah to be a military general, a military leader. At the time of Jesus, there was this incredible militaristic devotion. The people, many of the people, maybe even most, wanted war with the Romans. Remember, the Romans had an entire legion there in Palestine ready to put down any rebellion and to control and dominate and oppress the people. The Romans were not wanted. They were hated. And people at the time of Jesus thought that it was God's will that they wage war against the Romans. A lot of people wanted a war. And so when this man says to Jesus, Jesus, will many be saved? He's not asking about heaven. He's asking Jesus, when the war comes, will many survive the war? Will many be saved from the violence to come? That's what he's asking. And notice Jesus' response throughout all of his preaching, in spite of the fact that the people wanted him to be a military leader and wanted him to support their love of violence, Jesus said crazy things like, no, love your enemies. Don't want to fight them. Do good to those who hate you. Don't hate them back. Pray for those who persecute you. Don't sharpen your sword. Over and over, he was trying to convince the people to turn away from their love of war, to turn away from their love of hatred, to turn away from their dislike and exclusion of others. And so he gives this parable about that narrow way. And it's more explicitly stated in the Gospel of Matthew. It's very famous. We've heard this all the time. Matthew 7, 13 to 14. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the road broad that leads to destruction. And those that enter that broad gate leading to destruction, oh, there are many. How narrow is the gate, and small the road that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Too often we hear that parable, both in Luke and Matthew, and people say, oh, look, Jesus is saying that most everybody's going to go to hell. Look, he says only very few people find life and get to heaven. We're reading it wrong. Jesus is warning the people that if you wage war with the Romans, you are going to face destruction. And the many who want to wage war with the Romans, the many who refuse to accept his gospel of loving your enemies and doing good to those who hate you. The many who refuse that, they're going to find destruction. And you know what? He was right. 30 years after he said those words, the people got their war. And in the year 70 AD, the Romans came in and they absolutely decimated the city of Jerusalem. Every couple of weeks, they would have a crucifixion. The historians say the Romans would put up a forest of crosses, crucifying all the rebels against the Romans. Jesus was warning the people that the path that leads to war leads to destruction. The path of loving your enemy, very few find that path, and if they do, that's the path to life. And here's the thing that would have really bothered the people at the time. He then tells another parable about this great banquet in the kingdom of God. And you, those who love war, you who hate people who are different from you, you who hate your enemies, you who hate others who are not part of your race, you are going to find yourselves cast out. And the people from the north and the people from the south, they're going to be in that banquet with Moses and Abraham. You're not going to be there. And the people from the east and the people from the west. And here's the amazing thing. The people from the west, when Jesus would have said these words, it's the Romans. And so he's telling this parable that when God finally brings about this great conclusion to history, this great wonderful banquet in the future, all the people that those who wanted war, all the people that they hated are going to have seats in that banquet, but those who loved war are going to be cast out. This would have been so upsetting to anybody who wanted Jesus to be a military Messiah, wanted Jesus to advocate for their love of division, hatred, and war. But instead, he warns them that their desire for hatred and violence leads to destruction, and that tiny little narrow path, the path that leads to loving your enemy, doing good to those who hate you, praying for those who persecute you, that narrow path, only a few find that.